Let's welcome back into the studio Oliver Farry, who's going to take us through the international newspapers today. Hi there, Oliver.
Hello.
We're going to start off with Greece. The Greek papers clearly, obviously, focusing a huge amount on this supposed new deal on their country's debt.
That's right. There's a great deal of urgency about it in Greece today. The Daily Ephemerida calls today's meeting in Brussels the mother of all summits. There's no mistaking it. This time is the most crucial of all. Now, the centre-left Tanea is optimistic of a breakthrough, as we have been hearing this morning, though it says it will be the Troika that gets its way. Its headline is Athens signs and steps over its red lines. The Greek government, it says, will accept the proposals from Brussels.
Now, is Greece going to capitulate? Is that what that means? After all these months and months of standing off it, is it coming full circle?
Well, that's what some commentators seem to be saying. Simon Nixon of the Wall Street Journal has been a fervent critic of Syriza and Alexis Tsipras for the past 5 months. In today's papers, he once again denounces Athens' brinksmanship, which it has been using to try to change the Eurozone. He says that strategy has failed. Markets didn't go into a meltdown over fears that Greece might exit the single currency.
They haven't done brilliantly. They haven't thrived at the same time.
No, but they're still popular, and they're still they still can at least say they've got a mandate from their electorate, at least for the moment. And Greece's creditors don't seem to think they're making impossible demands. Nixon points to the fact that the fiscal targets that they're now being demanded by creditors are actually similar to those proposed by Athens in January. So they are actually meeting some of the way. But he says now the time has run out, and Mr. Tsipras will today face a take it or leave it deal. Athens may get the consolation prize, however, of getting the Eurozone to change, because there is that summit coming up later on this week that will discuss a number of reports on how to deepen integration in the Eurozone.
So a doubly crucial week then here in Europe. What kind of changes might be afoot?
Well, there may be some, but probably not enough to satisfy everyone. Wolfgang Munkau in the Financial Times, who's been very much an advocate for reform and also for a fairer deal for Greece, he says the real challenge this week is to save the Eurozone. He has backed down from his earlier claim that a Grexit would have a cataclysmic effect on Europe, but he still says it would be symbolically and politically damaging. He says Grexit would mark the moment when the EU moves from integration via stagnation to disintegration. He says the Eurozone as it stands today is not sustainable. New treaties are needed to fix it, but he despairs of it happening. He concludes Europe's finance ministers and Christine Lagarde signalled at last week's disastrous meeting in Luxembourg that they, like the Bourbons of the 18th century, have learned nothing and forgotten nothing.
We've got to look back in our history books to find out more about that. But right now we'll move on to another story. This one from the United States. You've picked out a local newspaper, which we don't always look at, but this is one from Charleston, South Carolina.
Yes, the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, had its first service since the shooting on Wednesday night. The New York Times and the Charleston paper, the Post and Courier, were reported from it. Over 1,000 people turned up, well over the church's 800 capacity. In attendance was the Governor of South Carolina, the Mayor of Charleston, and other public representatives. Presiding Elder Reverend Norval Goff said, "A lot of people expected us to do something strange and break out in a riot. Well, they just didn't know us." He also called on the congregation to be on alert against bigotry and hold elected officials responsible.
Well, speaking of elected officials, this has been a big controversy, hasn't it? We're talking about the Confederate flag being flown outside government buildings in certain parts of the southern United States. Right. A controversial topic being picked up on by a lot of different newspapers.
Yes, a lot of people have called on South Carolina in particular. It's not the only state that flies it, but they've called on them to stop flying the flag on grounds of the state capitol. The flag was the standard, of course, of the pro-slavery South during the American Civil War, and it's associated with a history of racism and segregation. Now, its defenders will dispute that, but there's definitely a controversy there. Now, for members of the Republican Party, it's a particularly sensitive issue. There are some, like former presidential candidate Mitt Romney, who called on the state to take down the flag. John McCain has been a vocal critic of it, and the Washington Post notes he's paid for it among Republicans. It's something the members of the GOP fear might alienate the party's southern base, though the New York Times notes that Republican frontrunner Jeb Bush had himself taken down the flag in the Florida capital when he was governor and placed it in a museum, something the mayor of Charleston, Joseph P. Riley, has called on South Carolina to do.
All right, well, we're going to finish off with just one other story. This one's from Israel. This has actually come up on social media.
That's right. Haaretz reports that Judy Moses, wife of Interior Minister Silvan Shalom, tweeted on Sunday evening, "Do you know that what Obama coffee is? Black and weak." Not a very witty joke by any standards. A torrent of outrage followed in both English and Hebrew, and within 23 minutes she had deleted the tweet and apologised.
There we go, the power of social media. Well, thanks very much for that roundup of the international news. Oliver Farry there.